Hey guys, Riftborne again. So, based on a game that I just had, I wanted to discuss carry frontlining and carry frontlining and you. Alright, so what carry frontlining is say you got, our team comp was Leona, me, Zinzao, Tristana, Victor, and Vladimir. And they had Nidalee, Maokai, Caitlyn, Riven, and Soraka. And what ended up happening for probably the first 5, 6, 7 minutes of the game was, first off, laning phase ended really early because when I play Leona, I tend to do really well in the bottom lane. My carry gets fed, it pisses people off, we start getting 4-man rushed. That usually tends to end the laning phase really quickly. Tends to end the laning phase really quickly when that happens because, I mean, you can't just leave 2 people down there to fend themselves off against 4 or 5 people. It's just not going to work. So my team ended up coming back down to help us, and so obviously the laning phase is going to end. What ended up happening was my Tristana and Victor, never mind, not Victor, it was Vlad, but he wasn't tanky yet. Vlad and Tristana kept ending up in front and taking Nidalee spears like crazy. Meanwhile, I've got a bunch of magic resist already, and not a bunch, but a bunch for the era of that time in the game. But so it was pretty early. So Tristana and Vladimir kept getting out in front of me. We were doing all right in team fights, provided Nidalee wasn't there. But there was a couple team fights when Nidalee was there, and my carries kept frontlining in front of the tanks, me and Zen, and just kept taking spears, and eventually we'd get pushed back. I mean, we weren't really losing any structures, so I guess it's really not that much to worry about. Somebody's messaging me. It's not really that much to worry about because, I mean, we still had our tanks, but what it does is it makes it to where even if we're not really going to take a loss per se, like they're not going to take a tower out of it, our carries got back before they got killed. But the fact of the matter is, if our carries would have stayed behind the tanks in those early fights, the game wouldn't have gone as long as it did, because we probably would have won the fights. Would have been able to push Nidalee's ground that she's standing on down her throat, back her off a little bit, maybe get her under a tower, get her team aggroed up a little bit so they engage on us rather than letting Nidalee stay out front and poke like people should do. Because, I mean, in low elo, people don't have any patience, so they're not just going to stay behind Nidalee and let Nidalee poke. And poke and kite and poke and kite and poke and kite, because that's what you do with Nidalee. Somebody's going to get pissed off and be like, man, I'm done waiting, and jump in. And, I was kind of counting on somebody doing that. And it did, and they did every time. So basically what I'm saying is, if those fights would have had our carries behind the tanks rather than out in front where they should never be, we would have been able to take some of those early fights a lot faster and probably snowball the game. I mean, we still won, but it was only after I had spent like 10 minutes yelling at my carries to stop getting out in front, and they finally realized what was going on. I told, I think it was Tristana that's not she raged, but not like raged. She was just like, don't tell me how to play kind of attitude, but not really anything hostile behind it. But I finally was like, look, let me get in front of you and take a spear. Watch what it does to me. And it goes shink, and my health bar moved like that much. So, and then Tristana's finally like, oh, alright, fine, I'm going to use you as a meat shield. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And Vlad, get behind Zin. And Trist, get behind me, and we're going to riot shield this lane. And, that's what I call it. When the 2 carries stay behind the 2 tanks and move up the lane, I call it riot shielding, because that's pretty much the concept behind it. So we just ended up, for the rest of the game, just riot shielding down the lane and just plowing. And there's really not much they could do about it because they were relying on Nidalee for all that early poke damage in team fights because they knew they were losing. It was like 22-16, I think, by the time anything really significant was happening in the game. And so at that point in time, Nidalee's got enough AP to really be a threat, and they were kind of holding off team fights. They weren't winning them or engaging them, but they were keeping us from doing it because our carries were in the front and Nidalee kept spearing them down, which kept denying us opportunities, which is what she's good at. But then when we finally got the team to come together and figure out that, hey, as long as we riot shield down this lane and our carry stays safe from spears, then we're not going to lose any ground. So that's just a quick story, a quick example of like carries not frontlining is incredibly important. You see carries, they get fed, they get a couple kills, they want to be out in front, they want to be looking for more kills, they want to be getting more fed, more snowballed, and they'll leave their tanks behind because you end up starting to get this complacent attitude like, I'm God, nobody can kill me, I'm too fed, this game is over. And you start frontlining, and that's how you start handing the game back to the enemy, is by making stupid mistakes like that. Just because you're fed doesn't mean you need to take unnecessary risks. There's no point to get out, and there's no point at all. At any point in the map, I don't care if you say you got the river here, and like Zen's up here, and Leona's down here. Neither of our carries, maybe the Bruiser can if she wants to, it's still not really advised to go anywhere without your tanks, but it's not like you're going to get vaporized and deleted. Like a carry would if you do wander too far. But if your tanks are behind the river, your carries should be behind the river. If your tanks are ahead of the river, then the carries can be ahead of the river, preferably with the tanks. If you're a carry, I mean, 9 times out of 10 there's more than one tank on a team, but if in the event that there is only one, follow the tank around the whole game. You're going to stay safe, you're going to continue to get fed, you're going to continue to snowball, you're not going to take any deaths, which gives the enemy a bunch of extra gold, especially if you're on, like, if you're legendary, that's 500 fucking gold for 1 kill. You don't want to be giving the enemy that kind of a gold recovery, so use riot shielding, stay with your tanks, don't frontline as a carry. It's one of the worst possible habits you can get into as an APC or an ADC. It's a good way to give up a lead. It's a good way to throw a game. Like, if they're really not that far behind and they do get that 500 gold shutdown bonus off of you and it goes onto a valuable asset to their team, that could be the moment that changes the game and makes you lose. So you really got to be careful with that. That's one of the reasons I like playing tanks, is because I love to frontline. Even, it's like one of my worst habits as an ADC or as a mid is like I do all the things I just talk about. That's why I know. If you start getting that mindset like, this team's done, I won already, it's over with, and you start frontlining, that's just a great way to give the lead back to the enemy and let them catch up to you. And it's a really, really easy habit to fix. It's as simple as looking down at the mini-map and going, where are my tanks? Where am I? And making a calculation as to where you need to be based on the information that you gather by making that observation. But that's all for this episode, and I hope you learned something from it. Stay behind your tanks, or at least stay with your tanks. Don't frontline if you're a carry, and your snowball will get even bigger. I'm Riftborne. Peace.